This episode is sponsored by Day by Day Book, a guided journal that helps you navigate the ups and downs of change while creating a life you love. For more information on the classic, recovery, or teen daybook, go to livedaybyday.com.
Don't worry about some big, humongous mountaintop goal. Think about what's the next 100 yards for you. Yeah, you eventually want to get to that mountaintop, but you've got to focus here, or you'll quit.
Welcome to Journeys Through Change, a podcast that inspires women to let go of the fear and say yes to possibility. I'm your host, Noelle Van, an author, creator, and empowerment coach who spent years in corporate America helping innovators and leaders ride the waves of change with ease and grace. I now work with women to step into change and unleash the power they have to create a life they love. Whether you're contemplating a change in your career, relationship, health, lifestyle, or anything in between, nothing's off the table. I'll be offering up simple insights to help you manage the ups and downs of change and sharing interviews with successful women who took a leap of faith to create the life they knew they were meant to live, sharing their wisdom, advice, and all the juicy lessons they learned along the way. So get cozy in your favorite comfy chair and let's get started. Finding our inner strength often happens in times of adversity, but there are a few among us who voluntarily take on challenges as a reminder not to rest too much on our laurels because there is still a lot of life to live. Dorothy Erlanger has the spirit of a 30-year-old and the determination of a pit bull when it comes to setting goals and crushing her personal best. At 73 years of age, she successfully completed the Olympic National Championship Triathlon, overcoming significant challenges, including a limb length difference and a decade-long hiatus from training. With only 4 months of focused training, Dorothy swam a mile, biked 25 miles, and ran a 10K, proving that age is no barrier to achieving extraordinary goals. Dorothy's journey is not just about completing a marathon. It's a testament to the power of perseverance and the belief that it's never too late to start anew. As a 20-year survivor of advanced ovarian cancer, she actively engages in patient advocacy, serving for nearly 15 years with NRG Oncology, where she is currently chair of the Patient Advocate Committee, and participating in programs such as Survivors Teaching Students and advisory roles at Massey Cancer Center. Dorothy embodies the spirit of overcoming odds, inspiring countless others to take on their challenges, no matter how daunting they may seem. Dorothy, it is such a thrill to have you here with us. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. It's so great to be here. When people talk about me like that, it's like, really? Is that me?
Well, I am telling you, there are so many aspects to you, Dorothy. We've talked about this. Where do we even begin? And usually I have the guest kind of start where you want to. So I'm going to leave it to you to give us a little bit maybe of background just to get us grounded, and then we can go from there.
I actually think that in a sense I grew up beating challenges because I didn't really have a choice. I had a limb length difference such that everything I did I had to adapt. I learned to play basketball with my brothers, and I competed pretty well, although they probably gave me a little quarter, I'm sure. I learned to swim without swimming in circles. That was a major challenge. And all the way through, I just kind of figured things out. And so I think it became just part of who I was. When I'm sitting in a corporation and I'd been there for 10 years and I'd had great experiences and a person walks in who I had known and says, "Do you want to leave the company and come join me?" I said, "Yes," just like that. And even before that, when I was offered a position in Brazil as the first woman that this corporation had ever put into an expat or an overseas management situation, I could instantly see that it was the right thing to do. And we're not always that clear on things, but sometimes things just fall into place. But the biggest challenge that I had to overcome was when I was diagnosed with ovarian cancer at just shy of 50 years old. I was Little Miss Healthy. I was running a business where I was traveling around the world. I was speaking to different groups. I was doing training for major corporations. And whammo, it came to a sudden stop. No history of cancer in my family, nothing. And it was really coming out of that, out of chemo 6 months later, and I was depressed because I was no longer doing anything. So here's how I actually got started in triathlon. And let me tell you, prior to that, I was your basic 3 weeks in January this year, I really am going to get in shape person.
Okay, yeah. That paints the picture.
I saw this, I was on the couch, I was just reading the paper, I really wasn't doing anything, I was finding it really hard to get back even to business stuff. And I saw this item about they were going to do training for this mini triathlon for the 50s crowd, meaning I would be amongst my peers, so to speak. And I thought, well, I can swim 300 yards in a pool with practice. I have a bike I had in college hanging in the rafters in the garage. Literally, I am not joking.
Were you a bike rider? I mean, had you been an avid or just kind of tootling around town?
In college, yes, I had. I'd done some serious bike riding, bike trips a couple of times and so on, but essentially nothing since then. I thought, well, if I really work at it, I can walk a 5K. Because believe me, I could barely walk from one lamp pole to another on a street at that point. I was really weak. And I thought maybe just doing one will help me get back to feeling better and having a goal. So I started in. And I didn't tell anybody I had come out of cancer. Believe me, 20-some years ago, if you told people you had ovarian cancer, they'd expect you to die in 6 months. And for most people, that was true. So I wasn't talking about it very much. And I started in, and I loved it. But I loved it not just for having the goal and feeling better and making progress, but I also loved it for the community around it. The people involved are just amazing. I mean, even when I did that race a few weeks ago, I mean, I had these young bucks go whoo by me, and as they go by, they'd say, "Great job!"
I love that.
in the middle of their race.
It's such camaraderie because everybody's in it together, right?
It is. Everyone's in it together. And honestly, except for those, the elites, it doesn't matter if you're first, last, or in the middle. You're out there, you're doing this. But the way I look at it and the way I talk with people about it is don't worry about some big, humongous mountaintop goal. Think about what's the next 100 yards for you.
Oh, that's such a good visual.
Yeah, you eventually want to get to that mountaintop, but you've got to focus here or you'll quit. We all would. So that's really how I look at it.
I feel like you have a lot of energy. It sounds like when you were obviously recovering and going through chemo and all of that, that's a lot. And obviously that takes a toll on your body. But in general, would you say that your disposition has always been fairly optimistic, kind of a go-getter? Have you been that way throughout your life?
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, there's been some big pivot points that I took a step back and made some very big changes. I have a particular question I ask myself, and I share this with other people as well. When I'm going to take on something that looks risky, and I don't mean physically risky, I mean just like a new job or a new position, new location, something like that. One of the questions I ask myself is, what's the worst case scenario? And so when I left a corporation to go into consulting 30 years ago when people were not doing that, my question to myself was, what's the worst case scenario? Well, the worst case scenario, in 6 months, I go back and find a job. And I thought, I can live with that. And if you can live with it, stop worrying about it.
Oh, it seems like such a simple thing. And in the moment, I'm sure that just helps to switch the energy.
Yeah, it does help to switch the energy and get your attention where it needs to be. And if it's not true, then stop. Don't do it. There are times in people's lives, I mean, if you've got young kids and a complete family depending on you, you can't go swanning off into some new venture unless you've got huge backup. But there are times when you can. I was single. I didn't have major commitments, and I could do that. So that's what I did.
Oh, Dorothy, I'm telling you, you're an inspiration on so many levels. Okay, so we're going to go back to, so you make this, you set the goal. This is right as you're recovering. So how do you get into training for this?
Well, in that case, there was a group training with a coach. And believe me, I will tell you, whether it's a mentor in business or whether it's a coach for physical activity, if you're going to start something completely new, find a coach. I'll tell you this most recent one, a bit of a story behind how I got back into this. I decided last fall to do a triathlon. I hadn't done any training. It was a sprint triathlon. It was just, again, to get me back up. I had gone through a serious loss, and I'd just been kind of hanging out. I hadn't done anything for years, literally, because I was doing tons of caregiving. My first thought was, I have to find myself a coach, and I have two criteria. Number one, he can deal with a person who was in shape but is not, and he can deal with appropriate training for an older athlete. And I asked around amongst my friends, and I found the right person. And even though I felt like he wasn't pushing me hard enough, His very first rule to me was don't get hurt.
That's a pretty wise one.
Yes, it is. But then you start in and you do things by stages and you take it a little bit at a time. Remember, you've got to train on 3 sports. You just do a little bit on one and a little bit on the other and then a little more intensity on one and then you build up some distance. And initially he let me swim with fins on for my workout. But as I went along, I shed that, but it helped me to get back started. On the bike, I initially did some pretty short distances. I did a fair amount just on a trainer because I was feeling unsteady, on the bike, even though I used to be a beast on the bike. Good gosh. It's hard to take that step back when I was in so much better shape, but you just listen to the coach or mentor and you follow through with what they're saying. If you found the right person, you got to find the right person or people. Find the people who are going to cheer you on.
Because you're talking second race. The first race you had a different coach.
Oh yeah, that was a very different thing. And I actually worked with that group, and then I went on and worked with an individual coach. I trained for an Ironman, and I failed. I missed the swim cutoff by 1 minute. Swore I would never do it again. 3 years later,
Oh.
Challenges. What can I say? Your coach says to me, he says, Dorothy says, I don't really normally encourage people to do this, but for you, the Ironman is kind of like a piece of unfinished business.
Oh.
And he nailed it.
Yes.
And so I looked at him and I said, if I do everything you say and nothing more, can you get me through an Ironman? He said, absolutely. And I did. And I beat the swim cutoff by 30 minutes.
Now, how old are you at this point?
I was 63. It was 10 years ago.
So then you had a bit of time away from it all, right?
Yep.
Because you were caring for your husband and there was a lot going on there. Tell me about the moment, if you can think of the moment, or at least thereabouts, where you decide that you were ready for another race.
That's a really interesting question because it didn't happen instantly. I had done that little sprint triathlon and I ended up first in my age group because nobody else got off the couch to do it. And I got a note from USA Triathlon offering me a place in the Nationals. And I sat on it. I didn't initially think I wanted to take it on, but it was there. And then I was thinking, I was feeling a little bit better and I was feeling like I wanted to do a bit more. And I thought, I'm going to take this on, but I'm only going to do the sprint distance, which is the short race. And then I got with my coach. I got started on that. But I said yes. The point at which I said yes to National was when I had made that decision.
And that was like an invitation from the universe, it sounds like. Like it just was kind of like, come on.
It really was an invitation from the universe. And so as I'm talking to my coach, he didn't push me, but he said, the sprint is kind of pretty easy for you. And I said, you're right. It wouldn't be that much of a challenge, and I want the challenge. And so I said, I will go for the Olympic. And so we trained for that. I am so much more secure on my feet. My balance is so much better than it was 8 months ago. My ability to catch myself if I trip is so much better than it was 8 months ago. I don't care what you do or in what quantity. If you're somewhat older, please do something that will help you to regain that stability. We all know my gosh, the biggest risk as we age. But I just feel like I can do this.
Well, and that's also amazing to hear that you were able to get that much better with balance in that short period of time. Because it's also about muscle movement and all, getting stronger and having a stronger core and all that kind of stuff. But so you trained for how many months for this?
4 months.
Wow. Okay. That's a short time. It is a short period of time.
Very short time to train for an Olympic. This is triathlon. I know that.
Now, I want to be inside your head because I think of these kinds of physical challenges and how I operate when they happen in my life. What were you saying to yourself the morning of? Like, what was it that was getting you in the game?
The morning of, by then I had already done one Olympic triathlon earlier in the season, so I knew I could do the distance. I had to do that for my own mental self-confidence. Slow? Yes, didn't matter. Didn't matter. I needed to have that check off that, yes, I can do this. So I'm out there, I'm in my wetsuit, which is a challenge for me to get off, but that's a different story. I get out in the water, and I'll tell you, I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to take this. I've got my plan. I know roughly what I use heart rate goals or targets to regulate pretty much what I'm doing. And I get out in the water. I started swallowing salt water. There are dozens of athletes around me. I'm getting swum over and kicked, and I panicked. My breathing was off. It was the worst panic I think I've ever had on a swim in a triathlon, ever. And I was very darn close to turning over and raising my hand. And if you turn over and raise your hand, there will be a kayaker or a paddleboard person there just like that. But what I did is I just stopped. I let my feet go down, and wearing a wetsuit, you can kind of float. You don't have to paddle to stay up. Took a couple of deep breaths, and I looked at the rest of the course, and I thought, I'm almost at the halfway point. I can easily see what I'm doing. I'm breathing better. I'm going to go for this.
That was a pivotal moment.
Absolutely a pivotal moment. And it's interesting, too, and at some point I'll use this in a keynote because it really illustrates a lot. You look at my heart rate chart because it records it. It was running 160, 165, 160, 165. You can literally see where I stopped.
Yeah.
And from there on, my heart rate was 140, 135, 140, which is where it should be. 135, 135, the whole rest of the race.
The power of the mind.
The power of the mind. It's a reset.
Wow. I mean, I've never done triathlon, and the swim is what scares me the most, to be honest with you. For what you just described, because whenever I see people starting a triathlon, I think of like, I am not a strong swimmer, and everybody's just jumping in at once. So you're kind of in this scramble at the beginning, aren't you?
Well, they do start you in waves. They've stopped the mass starts. I did one of those. That was the one I failed on. But even so, even if you're within a specific age group, in this case, there were 1,500 athletes in that race that I did a few weeks ago. 1,500 people. And so even my wave was probably 40 to 50 people, all starting at the same time from the same point. So yeah, you get swum over and you get kicked and you get pushed and so on. Nobody's trying to do anything to you.
No.
But it just happens. It just happens. So yeah, that's a little disconcerting. And then I hadn't been in salt water. I hadn't done a saltwater swim since I can remember. I think the last one I did was probably 20 years ago.
But did you train in salt water?
I didn't for this.
Right, because it's like a pool, right? You do pool training and...
I primarily train in a lake or in the James River. I have a triathlon club friend who lives out on a lake. I had a perfect 1 mile triangle, which has been a lovely Saturday morning thing for the summer. And then also the triathlon club here not in the summer, has twice a week James River swims, completely guarded, kayaks, paddle boarders, all the safety stuff you need. Gives you a chance to actually swim where there's a current and get that practice. Thankfully, you've got to be able to lift your head and sight where you're going. And I need to sight extra because of my arm length difference. And I started off this season, I was like, I haven't done an open water swim in 10 years. I don't know how to do this. I had to relearn sighting.
It almost seems like, just even as you describe it, like this is such an interesting challenge, but also it's kind of like a process, right? Of like learning and understanding and the internal work you have to do. And there's just so many things going on.
Well, I will tell you, people think the triathlon is all about the three sports. It is not. It's about two other things that are extremely important, and if you don't have them right, you will fail. One is nutrition, hydration. And I actually earlier in the summer, I wasn't getting enough hydration on a run. I almost collapsed by the side of the road and my blood pressure crashed because I was dehydrated. Fixed it. Okay. But that shows you what can happen. And the other part of it, and this is really, really important, is what's going on between your ears. You can either talk yourself into or out of anything, and you will not finish a triathlon if your head is not on right.
Yeah, I can imagine that. So you go then to the swim. I mean, you get out of the swim. You go to the bike.
Go to the bike. First of all, it took me forever to get the stupid wetsuit off. So my transition time, which is the time you run from the swim, you go into the transition area where all the bikes are racked. And luckily, it was easy to find. I was on the far left side. So I found my bike, got the stupid wetsuit off, Then you have to run out of transition. You can't or walk, but you cannot get on your bike until you get to the mountain line. If you do get on before the mountain line, you are disqualified completely. It's immediate. But there's people there to tell you this. And then we get on the bike, and it was cool. It was a great bike. They closed off a lane of the Atlantic City Expressway for us, and it was just so cool.
Now, are you feeling energized still during this? Okay.
Feeling strong and energized. And so then you come in from the bike, and you rack your bike, and then you put on your running shoes.
And the pain continues.
And the pain continues. This case, except for going from the transition area kind of across a few blocks to get out to the boardwalk, almost the entire run was on the boardwalk, which was really cool. And they had a whole section of it shut off for the race. People could walk on either side. So, people are cheering you on, and and it was a perfect day. But that 10K is hard. After all that other stuff, that 10K is hard.
The fact that the running's at the end of it to me is like, oh. But I don't know. I don't know if biking at the end of it would be any better. You're still taxing. You're at the end. You're giving it all you got.
It also depends on which sport you're particularly strong in.
Right.
And everybody's different. I'm not that strong a swimmer. I'm not a strong bike runner, although, frankly, one of my goals for next year, assuming I do events, which I probably will, is I want to take a chunk of time off my run. Because I had trained for such a short time, we really didn't have enough time to do any intensity work or any hill work. It just wasn't time. We just had to work on get me conditioned so I could complete it. Period. And, but then when you come into that finish line and people are cheering you and there's that archway and it's just amazing.
See, that's the part that from what I can recall in my own experience just of an event, which was the marathon, which New York, if I could do it again, I would do it. Dorothy,
Yeah.
you made me think, because after you and I spoke, when you were talking about your time, and my goal, and once again, it was like we said, it's all between your ears. My goal was to finish. I didn't care. I said, you could be there all day long. Granted, we had to beat the sweep, but you could be there. Just consider yourself on the road all day today. And I think that just helps but after you talked to me about your time, I went to look. My time was abysmal, which I don't even care. It was the fact that I did it. And half of it was the energy around you and the people cheering you on and the neighborhoods and the sights and all of that. It's just so much bigger than what you'd think it would be.
It's unbelievable. I'll tell you one of the most amazing experiences in that respect was I did the World Championship. I've been on Team USA several times. And I did the World Championships, and it was in London. And on the bike, they had the Pall Mall and the arch area completely closed off for us. So we are going down totally with just the racers down these main streets and under the arches and through the monuments, all through London.
It's like the street's yours. It's all yours.
And it's true in triathlon because the street is yours. If there's a cross street, cops will stop the traffic. You do not ever have to even think about it. And that's a great feeling, too.
Now, when were you in London? Was this prior to this?
Yeah, this was prior to this. This was probably the last major event I did, which was like 2013.
Okay, so you have done events throughout your life, throughout your adult life.
No, 50 onwards.
50 onwards, Dorothy. I love this, everything about this, because this makes me not only it inspires me, but it also motivates me.
And that's what I love to communicate to people. And that's what I love to communicate in my speaking. If people come away and say, oh, I think I'm going to try this, and I don't, could be a walk, it doesn't matter, but it inspires people to say, gee, I think I can do that.
It's amazing. So what is coming up next for you?
I'm not entirely sure. I may try to go, I will qualify for nationals for next year because I did some qualifying races this year and I know I qualified. If I go back to national, my goal is take 1 hour off my time.
Oh, wow. What does that mean to you in training?
What it means to me in training is I train well in advance. The first couple of months we're going to focus super, super much on my running because I've got a lot of room for improvement there. My bike, when I did the Ironman, I averaged 18 miles an hour for 112 miles. In this race, I averaged slightly below 15 miles per hour for 25 miles, I can bring that back up.
Oh, I love that. 112 miles, Dorothy.
That's the Ironman bike, yeah.
Whoa. Okay. I'm just trying to wrap my head around these distances because that is, where did you do that Ironman?
It was Ironman Maryland, and it was actually,
Maryland. Oh,
I did it, yeah. So it was up through the Blackwater Wildlife Refuge, and it's all Eastern Shore. Yeah, other than the fact that there were parts where there was water on the road because of high tides. But here's the other thing I did before that, and you always do this if you possibly can. The day before that, my husband was my Sherpa. My husband was the person who's there for you to bring stuff. Make sure you're in the right place. Make sure you get your packet. Make sure you get your bike in. Everyone, most people have a Sherpa, husband, wife, friend, whatever it is, and very valued. So we got up there and we drove the bike course. And so the day before, we drove it, and there was water on it, but I could see that it wasn't deep, and it didn't last more than about a quarter mile. So psychologically, that set me up for success. When I got to where there was water, I didn't freak out because I'd seen it, and I knew that I could bike through it. Got a great picture of me with rooster tails coming out from behind my bike in the water.
That is great. Well, it's true. It's almost like if you know that there's some sort of semblance of a plan. I don't know if that makes sense to even use that word, but like, yeah, you've got a plan or you've seen it. It's nothing totally new. No big surprises.
And the other thing on the run for this race, I mean, my coach had said, I want you running between 140 and 145 heart rate. And I could watch my heart rate on that one. I actually did about 140 to 148 or so, and then I would drop it back. And then I'd do 140 to 148 and drop it back. And I did the whole race on that. And I had the confidence that I could do it because I knew from my coaching that I could sustain that over that distance.
Right. So you have data to prove it, and you have a formula to go by.
Absolutely.
Oh, these are great tips, because I think if I do get back to at least the running side of things, which I was doing yoga this weekend and I was humbled. Like I'm getting it back into everything slowly. It's crazy.
Well, that's what I did. Is I got back into it slowly. I knew I wasn't going to be that fast on this race, but I also was confident that I was going to finish it.
Okay, so when is this next race coming up? Is it within the year?
It would be next year around this time.
Oh, right, because you just finished. Okay.
Just finished. And there might be something else coming up, but I don't have final word on it yet. So I will let you know.
Okay. That means we get to stay in touch, Dorothy, which is good.
That's right.
Well, and I think you could motivate me quite a bit by just listening to your stories.
Well, if you have organizations or associations that you're involved with that would love to have someone come in and really motivate people with stuff they can walk away with, yes. I'd love to be there.
Okay. I'm going to keep you in mind. I would love it, Dorothy. And, you were such a joy to talk to, because not only have you done so many amazing things and have yet to do so many amazing things, but your attitude about it is priceless. It's the way it's the way we all should really think about life. It's like, what next?
Right. As I say in Portuguese, which I happen to speak, e daí, now what?
Oh, that sounds good.
Yeah.
Dorothy, thank you so much for sharing your story with us. So appreciate it. Know that the listeners are going to love this and are going to really take it to heart. And you never know, we might all see each other out there out on the racetrack.
We might. Yes, we're not that far apart.
We're not. We're definitely not. All right. Well, thank you again, Dorothy.
Thank you for having me. And I hope your listeners enjoy it and take something away from it for themselves.
Thank you. All right. That's it for now. Until next time. Thanks for listening to the Journeys Through Change podcast. You can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or really wherever you get your podcasts. And be sure to follow us and leave a review if you've enjoyed this episode. And share it with a friend or on social media to spread the good word, so more women like you can find us and join in on the fun. For more information on the podcast or Day by Day book, go to livedaybyday.com.